Hey, thank you for joining us for an episode of the Medicine Mentors, where we interview leading physicians on the best tips, lessons, and pathways to mastery for aspiring physicians. Our mission is to learn from top mentors the most effective paths to mastery and fulfillment in medicine and to spread their knowledge. The guest of this episode is Dr. Heather Wakelee, a leading specialist in the treatment of lung cancer, thymoma, and mesothelioma. Dr. Wakelee has been in practice for nearly 2 decades at Stanford University. She is the physician lead for the Thoracic Malignancies Clinical Research Group and has developed research programs related to lung cancer and thymoma across multiple areas, including clinical trials, translational work, and population sciences. She is a PI on numerous clinical trials and faculty director of the Stanford Cancer Clinical Trials office. It is truly a privilege to receive her insights. In this interview, Dr. Wakelee underscores patient-centric care that honors the humanity of the patient, discusses the importance of self-care, notes collaboration and teamwork as essential for true success, and offers encouragement for residents in building their research careers from the ground up. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Medical Mentors. Enjoy.
As a student, you always got tests and things, and you're prepping for that. But when you're there, the importance of it is a little bit different, because something that you forget is something where a patient's potentially suffering for it, and that puts a lot more stress on it. And as those tasks, kind of trying to track them, a lot of people end up with checklists, and we all end up with checklists, or you forget things. It's very important not to lose track of why you're actually doing what you're doing as you're trying to focus on the checklist, most of which involves something in the computer. So it's easy to lose track of the patient. And I think that's one of the key things, is to be mindful of that. One of the other things I like to always emphasize to people is never to forget that a patient is a person who happens to have a disease. So don't forget about the person's humanity. And you see that, I'm an oncologist, as I mentioned, and so I see that a lot. When my patients are admitted and they're quite ill, they end up in an intensive care unit, there oftentimes becomes a real focus on how do I get this patient to change their code status, as opposed to what's going on with this patient really. You have to always remember that the person's a person, and with that, remember to be kind. And those two things can go a long way. The flip side of it is how do you find the reserves to continue to have that when you are beaten down yourself? You know, you've been working for 12, 14 hours, you've been doing that multiple days in a row, you haven't slept well, you don't have your family, you haven't been outside. And so it's really important that, and there isn't one answer for that. We all have to figure out for ourselves what it is that refreshes us, and to sort of make sure you're kind to yourself once in a while too. It's a difficult balance, and I think it's one that we spend a lot of time in our training learning, but not everybody learns it as well. If you're people listening to this and think, oh, I don't think that's me, well, then maybe that's not going to be the best field, but you have to be able to find some measure of that in whatever you do. And I think one of the ways that I help to refresh myself about it is you'll look at friends that you knew who go off into other fields like business people, and they seem to be making a heck of a lot more money and not working nearly as hard. But then at the end of the day, how much value are they really adding to the world? And when we're in healthcare, even though we might not make as much money as some people, and we're working a lot harder than many people, at the end of each day, you can step back and say, wow, I actually impacted a few people, or a lot of people, or I learned something that's really novel that's going to help a few people, or a lot of people, or maybe it's not, but at least nobody else has to repeat that. And the more you can step back and think about that, that's one of the things that's good. And then also finding time to block out and say, right now I'm not a doctor, I'm just me. I'm just a mom, or a husband or wife, or a significant other, or a pet owner, or just a friend, just something that's not as the doctor as the care provider. I think in the digital era that we're in now, where everyone's constantly on their phones, it's a little bit harder to do that, but it's really important to just stop. And I'm an outdoor person, so I'll use that to be like, I'm going to go out and be on a hike, or just be outside for like 10 minutes. That can have a big restorative opportunity for me.
My grandfather used to tell me, you give happiness, you'll get happiness. And my question is, I find that having personal experience with disease really helps you go beyond the financial aspects and really into the emotional aspect of the patient. What is it in your upbringing, or was there a turning point for you?
So I've known forever I wanted to be, so I've always wanted to be a doctor. There's like something I wrote in first grade or something that says that. So that never changed. I didn't know I wanted to be an oncologist when I was a small child, of course, but I knew I wanted to be a physician. That's just always been part of my nature. I didn't have any family members with cancer. I didn't have any family members who had serious illness. That wasn't something that was a turning point in that way that is for many who are drawn into medicine. It just was what I wanted to do. And then when I went into oncology and in the ward, part of it was the fact that I realized I was someone who could be a part of that sadness, but not have it overcome me. And I think that is, again, a key part of being an oncologist is having a way of kind of refreshing yourself without being able to absorb that, without taking it all in too much. So that was part of it. And then just there was so much we still had to do. There was so much that we weren't able to do for patients then, and things have moved a long way, but there's still a lot that we need to be able to do better than we are now.
You're a top oncologist. What is the key to success to physicians, to other physicians? If there was one thing that you would say, what has been your key to success?
So I've been able to build a strong team. And I think that when we work in medicine, we're working to help other people, working to help our patients, but we also need to remember to work to help each other in a collaborative way. And so the people who try to rise to the top by sort of pushing away others or kind of trying to take, that does not work well in the long run. Yes, there are some people who have been successful at that approach, but I don't think you're really content in the same way.
Yeah.
So I find that a lot of my success is surrounding myself with people who I love working with, who are not just colleagues, but they're friends. And so at the end of a clinic day where it's been 10 hours and everyone's kind of spent, you can sort of make some jokes around it and about, oh, okay, now I'm going to go out and have dinner with my family or whatever. And you kind of, it helps to ease that pressure. Or if I'm having a particularly difficult encounter, I can turn to someone who I know is a friend and trust them and to get their advice and have that reflect back. From the standpoint of building research collaborations, it's being able to work with someone where they know if I'm asking them to work with me, I'm not going to then take it and run. I'm going to include them in whatever we're working on and then come back to them with other ideas and kind of have that back and forth. And I think the more you can remember to do that, again, it gets back to that central kind of kindness, right? If you're respectful and kind to people, then they're respectful and kind to you for the most part. And then you can really build much stronger relationships, both from a patient interaction, but also from a colleague interaction.
What keeps you going? What's like a happy moment that you remember, or what is any moments that you remember in particular?
One of the nice things that can be very refreshing is coming to conferences. So we're having this meeting at the ASCO meeting. We're doing this interview. And so while I'm here, I'm constantly seeing people I know walking by. To connect with other people who are doing the same thing that you do really helps a lot also. Because what we do as physicians is hard. It's a difficult job. It is one that is much more compensated than many, many other careers, but there are many that are far more compensated. We work much longer hours than most other types of folks, and we deal with really hard situations. So that can be draining, like we talked about at the beginning, and knowing other people who are doing the same thing and sort of being able to talk to someone who totally gets what it is that you're going through and can help you by saying, oh, well, you know, when I was in this situation, or I actually understand what you're saying, that can be really, really rejuvenating as well. Coming to places where you get to see your colleagues and friends is really helpful.
Now, you are a leader, a physician leader. How can residents become leaders in their professions?
It's not something where you just say, I'm going to be a leader, and all of a sudden that's what happens, right? It's about working hard. It's about taking ownership of what you do and being respectful and kind as you're going through that work, right? So when I think about the fellows who have worked with me or students who have worked with me, it's the ones who are, if someone says, can you do this? You know, they're like, oh, of course, yeah. And then it's done, and it's done on time. As opposed to, well, can't that other person do it? That's one of the early separators. And if there's too much that you're doing beyond what you can do, it's not just saying, no, I can't. I mean, you have to be able to say no to some things, or you're not a very good leader either, because then you have too much on your plate. But it's early on, it's saying yes to most things, and not always with a what is this doing for me right now, but with a what might this opportunity do for me if I do this well, lead to other opportunities. So it's being mindful of that. It's being willing to sort of see how you're a part of a team as opposed to it just being about you. Real leaders aren't looking at themselves, they're looking at their team and how their team is doing and what they're doing to foster their team. And so it's sort of having that mindset from the beginning, even when you're kind of lower in team, so that as you rise through the ranks, you don't see yourself necessarily, so I'm here and everybody else doesn't matter. Everybody matters. And people who are aware of that are the ones who really become the best leaders.
You talked about balancing family and professional life. which is very important. If you could tell us more about balancing professional and personal life.
It's important to set out specific time that's family time or your time, like, time to just be you. Not everybody's going to have a family in the same definition of family. So people need to figure out a way where they can spend time where they're feeling like they're connecting with people they really want to be with. And for many of us, it's a traditional family, but there are a lot of other ways that can look.
Any advice regarding research for residents?
So when you're doing research as a resident, you're not necessarily going to get the project that's going to get you a New England Journal paper right away. You don't want to feel like, I'm only doing some stupid case review. Well, you got to build up the CV slowly. And so you start with the case report or the case review or the review article, and then you build from there, because you're not going to hit the jackpot with the greatest paper at the first spot. You also don't want to look at it as if you're working on something that you deserve to be first author. I've worked recently, unfortunately, with a couple of students, no disclosures. They didn't want to participate in a research project unless they upfront said, well, I'm expecting to be first author on this. And I was just appalled, because that gets back to being a good leader. Is you're not looking at it just for you. You've got to have some mindset. And if you have a good mentor, and finding mentors is one of the absolutely key parts to all of this, a good mentor is going to help you know, well, this project's helpful for this way, and this one maybe is just you being a team player. And then that's going to build, because the people who are shown to be successful and work hard and be team players are the ones going to get more projects, and then they're going to, build from there. You don't have to have the jackpot paper. You can have a lot of sort of lower impact and still clinically important work, or if you're in the lab, sort of building up things. Telling the whole story from the base up can be really important. Occasionally someone's going to get lucky, and they're going to be the one that finds this discovery just by serendipity, and that's wonderful for them. But you can't expect that you have to be that. There are different paths forward, and so I think it's accepting that there's so many different paths. Finding a good mentor is one of the key ways to help you kind of track that. And sometimes it's not just one mentor. You can have mentors for different aspects of what you're working on.
Thank you for joining us for another episode with an inspiring leader of medicine. We owe a big thank you to Dr. Wakelee for sharing her insights and advice with us about how to successfully navigate a career in research. We hope you took some of her points to heart, that you remember to see patients as people, that you take time to refresh, and that you approach medicine as a team sport. Please subscribe to stay updated on our newest episodes featuring the insights of top physicians, and please do comment about your experiences to keep the conversation going. Thank you for joining us for this opportunity to learn from the Masters of Medicine.